What I'm going to tell now is, even though it's not something that I saw the Rebbe do or the Rebbe write or something, but it has to do with something that the Rebbe said, even though it's not a story with the Rebbe himself, but it's something about what the Rebbe said. And this is that, I think it was in the beginning of the Lameds, Tzach in New York arranged that people should go to the armory Sunday morning. Sunday morning in the armories, they were able to have an hour of services religious services for the soldiers. So they would send two people to each armory for an hour, and the two people would divide the work. One person would stand in front and pray with them, so to speak, say certain tefillis in English, and the other person would be in the back, and he would go from person to person, from soldier to soldier, to put on tefillin. My route was, I used to go with Mr. Fisher. It was a man, Mr. Fisher. He was Niskarev to Rebbe Springer from Baltimore. A mamish, a Balshemskerid, a real poshet but a hartzik a real Balshemskerid. So I went with him. I was the one that would say the services, and he was the one that was asking the soldiers to put on film. So one of the Sundays when I went with him, so I was standing up front and saying what the tefillas with him, watching what's happening. There was about 40, 50 soldiers, and I watched him, and I saw that he walked over to the first guy in the back, asking him to put on film. And the Seder was, as we understand, if the first guy said yes, then automatically went further. But if the first guy said no, probably the second would say no too. And it's very hard to get the people to put on film. So this time I watched and I saw he walked over to the first guy at the end, that he's the last person, first guy that he was able to approach, and he asked him to put on film. I saw from far and I'm watching, and the guy said no, like basically was left at him and said no. Then he went over to the second, and I saw the same thing happen. And I understood that would happen, the second, the third, the fourth. Now watching. Then I see, a moment later, he calls out the first guy and says something, whispers for a few moments something into his ear. And I see the guy agree to put on film. And if he agreed, the second guy agreed, the third guy agreed, and a whole bunch of people put on film. I was very surprised. What did he say to him? So on the way back in the car, I asked him, Mr. Fisher, what did you say to the soldier that made him put on tefillin and automatically schlepped the rest? So he says there's a sikha that the Rebbe said in Tovshin Yud Aleph, and this is a sikha in Shvuas Tovshin Yud Aleph. The Rebbe said to somebody that you have to be mekar of other Yidden, you have to speak to them about Yiddishkeit, and the Rebbe mentioned tefillin and Shabbos, and even though he might laugh at you now, but later on he will understand it, and it'll affect him. And the Rebbe said to this person, if you're embarrassed, so you could tell him like this. And if you tell him this will help. And he said to him, tell him, and he said it in Yiddish, as we have his sichas in Yiddish. As if ran einer ait schneerson, was kennt kein English. Redt Englisch mit einem mehr dicken Akzent, als man versteht nur Hälfte oder Viertel von dem, was redt. Is redt als eine Sachen, was ist nicht wie es kommt in Amerika. Ihr kennt ihm das sagen von meinem Namen, wird es spelen. Translated into English, said if you're embarrassed, you tell him that there's a person a Yid by the name of Schneerson, that he doesn't even speak English. He speaks English with a terrible accent, that you understand only half or a quarter of what he says. And he says things which are not really acceptable in America. So you tell him this in my name and it'll help. So this Mr. Fisher tells me that he had somebody type up just those few lines, that there's a person, a Yid, Schneerson, doesn't speak English, the whole line in Yiddish, and he chazed it out balpeh. And he took out from his pocket the piece of paper where it had all these words in Yiddish, and he knew it balpeh. And the Rebbe says, if you say it, it'll have an effect. So he said, what I did was I called out the first soldier, and I said to him in his ear these words in Yiddish. The soldier would obviously not understand the word of Yiddish. He said these words to him in Yiddish. And when he said these words to him in Yiddish, the soldier took out his hand and allowed him to put on tefillin, and then the second one and the third one. So here I saw the emunah pshuta from Aish Poshut that believed in the words of the Rebbe. When the Rebbe said these words, he chazed out these words balpeh, and he said these words, and that's what actually paled. If he really meant it with an emes, like the Rebbe says, if you say it in my name, vet es paled, and I saw the ein de bosser how this paled, even though he said it to him in Yiddish.